Dr. Katie Hayward from Queen's University, you're a sociologist who's an expert on Northern Ireland and its conflict resolution. You spoke to the European Parliament this week. How important is EU membership for the Good Friday Agreement?
So at the very start of the agreement, the declaration of support that's signed by the British and Irish governments describes themselves as friendly neighbours and as partners in the European Union. And that phrase is very interesting, I think, because it reflects a relationship of cooperation and trust and collaboration that they became normalised through EU membership. So the relationship between the British and Irish government hasn't always been easy, but EU membership changed that relationship. And so that's a fundamental baseline, I think, for the success of the agreement that we've had in the past 20 years. On top of that, the European Union created a model for cooperation and from being able to cooperate across borders without any drama. It wasn't politicised, it was just normal. And this, I think, is a good way of understanding why the agreement has worked, because it's enabled cooperation between unionists and nationalists in Northern Ireland, but also north-south on the island of Ireland, and then, of course, between the British and Irish.
You've carried out a study on views, I think it's in the mid-border region of local people. What are your conclusions from that study?
Yes, so we looked at the central border region, so that's 8 local authorities on either side of the border. And we found, we were asking them essentially about their experience of crossing the border, their understanding of the impact of European integration and their views on Brexit. And it was interesting to see that actually they cross the border much more easily now. And a lot of that is to do with EU membership. A lot of the rights and benefits of EU membership have been reflected in the ease of cross-border movement. But all the time, it keeps coming back to the success of the peace process. So a lot of the respondents on both sides of the border were saying if there's any hardening of the border, they would see this as being a blow to the peace process and an undermining of the 1998 agreement.
Somebody who is an expert in conflict resolution, do you think Northern Ireland is in danger of going back to the bad old days?
I would be very cautious about dramatising the situation that we're facing in terms of immediately looking to or being worried about the emergence of paramilitary activity, although we know that that continues to be a threat, and even recent incidents in Northern Ireland show that paramilitary organisations are still active and intimidating their own communities. So that is a certain threat, but I think much more visceral actually is the impact that uncertainty associated with Brexit and of course with the current uncertainty about devolution in Northern Ireland, the effects that that has on trust and cooperation in Northern Ireland on a day-to-day basis. And of course, at the highest level, the relationship between the British and Irish governments that's been so important to the success of the agreement and the peace process. Tensions between the British and Irish in public have a negative impact on relations between unionists and nationalists in Northern Ireland. And I think that's the most urgent concern at the moment.
We're coming up to the summit in December. At that summit, the UK is certainly hoping to move on from phase 1 of these negotiations. What do you think a satisfactory solution to the Irish border question would be?
That's a big question, and it's important to note that the EU has said they're not looking out for solutions here. They're looking for a commitment to avoiding the hard border in Northern Ireland and to supporting the peace process and upholding the agreement. So essentially we're talking about a principle here and looking for a form of words and supported by a clear commitment to recognising the impact that a hard border would have on Northern Ireland and on the peace process. So this is a bigger question because it's not just about the future trading relationships. It's about the normalisation of cross-border activity that covers a whole range of activities from road safety awareness campaigns to sharing of health services, emergency ambulance transfers, etc. This is the environment within which the agreement has flourished, and it's looking to see from the UK government an expression of how they could continue to enable that to happen after Brexit.
There are rumours that one solution being proposed is that decision-making power to maintain convergence with EU regulations will be devolved down to the executive in Northern Ireland. Do you think that's a realistic solution?
Yes, it has to be a specific solution for Northern Ireland. And one concern I think so far has been seen from the UK government that the belief that a hard border means a physical border or a visible border. In actual fact, a hard border is really experiencing friction and difficulty in crossing that border. And of course, there's plenty of evidence to show all around the world that we reduce friction across borders by regulatory convergence. And so that's what I think we're listening out for at this current stage leading up to the December summit, to be able to show how that regulatory convergence across the island could continue in certain sectors and in key areas, in a way that does not undermine, of course, Northern Ireland's constitutional position within the United Kingdom. This would depend on devolution working, of course,